I rarely feel compelled to share personal matters here, but this situation has escalated to a level of complexity that I can no longer manage privately. Allow me to lay out the circumstances from the start. My husband, Bobby, shares an incredibly close bond with his family, particularly his parents. His dedication to them is so deep that he rarely questions their demands, no matter how unreasonable. This blind loyalty is becoming problematic, but he seems oblivious to it. When I try to discuss my concerns, he reacts with frustration and dismisses my feelings. The heart of the issue, and the reason I'm seeking advice, is that Bobby has always gone above and beyond to satisfy his parents' wishes. I understand the desire to support one's family. I would do the same if my parents lived nearby. However, there should be reasonable limits, which Bobby consistently ignores. Since we both started earning steady incomes, his parents have repeatedly asked us for financial help. It's not that they're struggling, they're quite well off and indulge in various luxuries. Initially, I was sympathetic because they are Bobby's parents, and I recognized the importance of including them in our lives, but as time passed, my discomfort grew. Over the years, we've sent them a significant amount of money, enough that we could have funded a couple of international vacations with those savings. I've tried to explain to Bobby that while we live comfortably, it's unwise to pour all our extra resources into his parents, especially since it leaves us little for future needs, like planning for children or making significant purchases. At first, it seemed he understood my point, but the conversation quickly escalated into an argument. He insisted that since we are doing well, we should help his parents with our extra money. This isn't about refusing to support them, it's about finding a balance between their needs and our future. I'm reaching out for insight on how to navigate this delicate family dynamic. Bobby is resolute in his decision to continue financially supporting his parents, which infuriates me to the point that I nearly walked out during our last argument. My anger is compounded by their past treatment of me. If they had embraced me as a member of the family, I might have been more willing to accommodate their requests, but their lack of warmth and support when I needed it most has made it difficult for me to feel generous. Back when Bobby and I were just starting out, right after I graduated and he began his career, we were not in a strong financial position and couldn't even afford a house. I remember the day we approached my in-laws to share our struggles and ask for their help in starting our journey toward homeownership. Their immediate response was a flat refusal. Instead of considering our request, they lectured us for an hour about adult responsibilities and the importance of saving, a conversation that felt more dismissive than helpful. Despite my frustration, I kept my thoughts to myself. It was disheartening to witness their unwillingness to support their son. I resigned myself to their stance as long as Bobby was okay with it. However, the issue resurfaced when I inherited a house from my mother about a year and a half ago. It was a beautiful property, but it required significant renovations. While we had saved some money, it wasn't nearly enough to cover the necessary repairs. This ongoing cycle of needing financial support while being met with rejection from his parents, who continued to demand our assistance without reciprocation, strained my perception of our relationship. This imbalance highlighted a painful truth: they were willing to take from us without offering any support in our times of need. When we needed to renovate the inherited house to make it livable, we once again approached my in-laws, hoping they might assist us with a small sum. Yet again, they refused. This time, they urged us to earn our own money and stop asking for theirs. They even suggested that I sell the house and invest in something actually useful, dismissing it as something that looks like crap. Their words cut deeply. This house was more than just a structure to me, it was a cherished connection to my mother. I held back my hurt and anger in that moment, thinking it would be impolite to react. Now, part of me wishes I had spoken up. Maybe that would have curbed their blatant disregard. Undeterred by their earlier rejection, I decided to take on the restoration of the house myself. I dedicated myself to the project, scraping together funds and pouring my energy into renovations. As my earnings increased over time, managing the project became a bit more manageable. After months of hard work, the house transformed into something truly remarkable, a home that filled me with pride, standing as a testament to my dedication. A few months later, I seized the opportunity to showcase my efforts by inviting my in-laws over for dinner to celebrate my mother-in-law's birthday. By then, the house looked stunning, and I hoped the evening would unfold positively. Despite the usual dynamics of our gatherings, typically, conversation with my in-laws flows smoothly unless the topic of money arises, in which case tension often follows. When they arrived to see the renovations, their surprise was evident. As soon as they stepped inside, their eyes widened in disbelief at the transformation. Internally, I couldn't help but find amusement in their reaction. They clearly hadn't expected such extensive improvements. They lavished compliments on the house, which initially felt gratifying. However, their enthusiasm quickly turned overwhelming as they meticulously inspected every detail, bombarding me with questions about the costs. While their curiosity might have stemmed from concern given our financial constraints, it felt intrusive. Their persistent inquiries seemed less about genuine appreciation and more about calculating how much we had invested in the renovations, reducing my hard work to mere figures. The dinner started on a pleasant note, with enjoyable conversation. But the atmosphere shifted when my mother-in-law directed the discussion toward dream vacations. She inquired about my ideal getaway, yet her disinterest was palpable. It felt as though she was merely waiting for me to finish so she could share her own thoughts. Her sudden enthusiasm after my brief response felt forced, raising malacia suspicions. It didn't take long for the true motive behind their visit, and the peculiar behavior, to come to light. They wanted our financial support for a vacation home. After years of declining our requests for assistance, here they were, asking us to contribute to a luxury they desired, a vacation house they were eager for. Despite their comfortable financial situation, I couldn't fathom why they wouldn't save for it themselves. They seemed to assume that because I had successfully refurbished my home, we must be wealthy, a notion that couldn't be further from the truth. When I probed for more details about their desire for a vacation home, their explanation was simply that they were bored with their lives and yearned for a change of scenery on the weekends. I was taken aback and frustrated by their sense of entitlement when I explained that we simply didn't have the funds to support such extravagant requests. Bobby's reaction shocked me even more. He looked at me as if I had committed a grave offense, sternly stating that spending on his parents' happiness was never a waste. His words and glare implied that I needed to be more cautious about what I said, leaving me feeling both baffled and hurt. This exchange highlighted a deeper issue in our priorities and understanding of financial responsibility. Bobby knew, deep down, that a vacation house was hardly a necessity, not a life-or-death matter. His father was still employed and financially capable, yet they seemed to prefer having us fund their comfort instead of saving for themselves. Suddenly, it struck me, Bobby wasn't the only child. He had an older brother, Jack, so why weren't they asking him for money? When I raised this question, the atmosphere grew tense. It felt as if they were gearing up to make my life difficult. They claimed that Jack wasn't financially stable, and they didn't want to burden him because, unlike us, he had children whose needs took priority. I pointed out that Jack's financial situation was similar to ours. He earned about the same, but his expenses went toward his family. I reminded them that we also planned to start a family and that continuous financial support from my in-laws could jeopardize our ability to provide for our future children. Their response was dismissive. Since we didn't have kids yet, they argued, we should have money to spare. The conversation quickly turned into emotional manipulation, not directed at me. Since they knew I wouldn't budge, but aimed at Bobby, they lamented their loneliness and boredom now that both sons were preoccupied with their families. They framed the vacation house as a solution to their supposed solitude, and Bobby, ever the dutiful son, was swayed by their emotional pleas. Caught in a precarious position, I tried to navigate these tense discussions without letting my in-laws sense they had us cornered. However, things escalated dramatically. Just a week ago, Bobby and I had our most intense argument yet, though it didn't involve physical aggression. His words were cutting. He declared that the $420,000 he planned to give to his parents was not mine to decide. He implied he had the right to do as he pleased with it, claiming he had previously sought my input out of consideration, but no longer felt obliged to do so. The argument reached a peak when he transferred the money to his parents without any further discussion. I only discovered this when my mother-in-law casually mentioned receiving the funds. I was furious, not just about the money, but about the blatant disregard for our shared decision-making in our marriage. This secretive action left me feeling deeply betrayed and ignited a fierce debate over our financial priorities and respect within our relationship. Bobby knew I opposed his decision, yet he chose to donate the entire $420,000 he had saved over the years to his parents without setting aside a single dollar for us. When I confronted him and urged him to retrieve the funds, he dismissed me abruptly, insisting on handling his relationship with his parents his way. Despite my reminders that we should make such significant financial decisions together as a couple, he wouldn't listen. Our ongoing disagreements seemed to exhaust him to the point where, in the heat of the argument, he shockingly threatened me with divorce. He yelled that if I interfered with his decision to support his parents financially, he would end our marriage. The absurdity of that threat hit me hard. I had stood by him through every high and low, and now he was willing to abandon our marriage over prioritizing his parents' desires over our shared future. I questioned him. Didn't he care about our plans, about building a life, having children, and finding happiness together? It felt like none of it mattered to him anymore. His focus was solely on fulfilling his parents' wishes, while I felt neglected and sidelined. In a fit of anger, he stormed out, slamming the door behind him. It's been a week since that day, and he hasn't returned home. Despite my numerous texts, calls, and voicemails, he continues to ignore me or leave me hanging. The hurt runs deep. I never imagined something like this could drive Bobby away. When I reached out to my in-laws, I learned that Bobby has been staying with them since he left. He hasn't come home once. I'm overwhelmed with stress and confusion about what the future holds, grappling with the fear that what seems like a trivial disagreement could potentially lead to the end of our marriage. As the days stretched into more than a week without Bobby returning home, I reached a crucial turning point. Initially hesitant, I found it increasingly difficult to ignore the chaos and the blatant disregard shown by both Bobby and his family. If he was threatening divorce, maybe that was indeed the path we were heading down. So, I took decisive action and contacted my lawyer at the earliest opportunity that morning. She informed me of my options, not only regarding the divorce itself but also about potential legal actions I could pursue given the circumstances. After our comprehensive discussion, a stark realization hit me. I no longer wanted to be tethered to the memories encapsulated within the walls of the house my mother had left me. Once a symbol of maternal love, the house had become a constant reminder of the turmoil in my marriage. Determined to move forward, I made the decision to sell it. The property was entirely in my name, a parting gift from my mother, allowing me to sell it without needing Bobby's consent and to use the funds however I saw fit. The sale proved quite profitable, significantly alleviating the financial burden of the legal proceedings. The very next day, after finalizing the divorce papers, I sent them to Bobby. I knew he received them almost immediately because my phone rang shortly thereafter. It was Bobby, furious and incredulous. He ranted about how absurd I was being, claiming he intended to file for divorce anyway. His shock escalated when he learned of the legal actions I had initiated. The call was heated, filled with accusations and disbelief, marking a clear turning point in what had become an irreparable rift. As Bobby lost his temper, I found myself unable to tolerate his anger any longer, so I hung up midway through the conversation. In the days leading up to the court hearing, I was a bundle of nerves, overwhelmed with apprehension about the potential outcomes. My mind raced with worries about what could go wrong. What if the court ruled against me? What if I lost the money I made from selling the house? Despite these fears, I refused to let them consume me. I dressed confidently, donned my best smile, and walked up to the courthouse, ready to face whatever lay ahead. On the day of the final hearing for our divorce, things turned out remarkably well. Not only was I able to retain all the proceeds from the sale of the house, but the court also ordered Bobby to pay me a significant sum in alimony. This outcome was unexpected, especially receiving more money from him, but it felt justified given the emotional and mental toll his actions had taken on me. Accepting this money felt like reclaiming my dignity. The disapproval on Bobby's family's faces as the verdict was read brought me a sense of vindication. They likely never anticipated that their actions would backfire so severely. They thought they could manipulate me without consequence, only to find themselves facing significant losses. Since then, life has been relatively calm. I did receive a harsh call from my mother-in-law, criticizing my actions and accusing me of being selfish and incapable of caring for others. She even suggested that I could never start my own family. Despite her words, I've been able to move forward. I used the proceeds from the house sale to secure a new apartment, finally allowing me to save without the constant pressure and demands from others. However, a part of me still wonders about the measures I took. Was taking him to court too extreme? I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this, so please share your opinions in the comments below. The events unfolded in surprising ways, but I felt they were necessary given the circumstances. As I scrolled through the comment section of my latest post, I was struck by the range of opinions. Some commenters defended Bobby, asking, "What's the big deal about giving your parents $420,000 if you have $550,000? Conversely, many vehemently disagreed, supporting my perspective by pointing out that we had been financially assisting his parents for years while trying to establish our own financial security and save for our future home. The debate in the comments was clearly divided. A significant number criticized my decision to sell the house and keep the money, labeling it disrespectful since the house was legally mine. However, about half of the commenters backed my actions, asserting that it was precisely what I needed to do under the circumstances. So let's open this up for more discussion. Drop your comments below, and let's dive deeper into the situation.